Welcome to Constructive, a podcast about construction, technology, and whatever else comes up. Hope you enjoy. All right, welcome to episode 4 of Constructive, a podcast about construction, technology, and whatever else comes up. I have a friend of mine here who I've worked with in the past and just really enjoyed his leadership. Do you want to introduce yourself a little bit, Duane? What are you up to lately?
Sure. My name is Duane Stanley. I mean, a lot, up to a lot, always busy, which is a good thing. I'm currently the pre-construction executive for Sunrise Erectors in Canton, Massachusetts. We're a specialty subcontractor, and we focus on exterior facades, anything cladding elements, anything exterior glazing, but we're not limited to just that. So that's my current role, and I've been at a lot of places leading up to this, that's for sure. More than I care to admit, but enough to get me to where I am, so I'm happy about that.
Yeah, I just really enjoyed working with you, like I said, and noticed I am doing this podcast partially on construction technology, but the more I think about it, the more I'm like, yeah, I want to keep talking about technology. But I also want to focus on things that aren't going to change so rapidly. Technology feels like a subject that if I just talked about technology, it would become outdated within 6 months just because how fast technology is changing. So I want to talk about people stuff. I want to talk about leadership. I want to talk about partnerships. But maybe we could just start off with kind of my biggest topic of the podcast, which is implementing technology in construction companies. What have you seen as opportunities for adopting new technology and maybe some of the pitfalls that make it hard to adopt new technology?
I mean, that's a broad stroke. There's a lot there. Right off the rip, what comes to mind is that if you're not respecting technology and the incorporation of technology, you're going to get left behind. At the scale of let's just say large scale construction. There are mom and pop service subcontractors that they might use a simple interface in terms of like Salesforce or different types of platforms to manage the customer base and maybe schedule their appointments and stuff like that. But they'll be more so unaffected by the sophistication of technology in the industry these days. But the larger the scope of work, the larger the project, the more technology really comes into play. And I've been in the industry since 1996, so whatever many years that is, 27, and or something like that. And I've seen the integration of technology just leaps and bounds every step. But like I said, every 6 months is something new, and it's been very, very quickly in that pace over the past 15 years. Like before that, it was smaller incremental incorporation, and then I'd say it's more, it's expedited now. And a good example is, just when you're doing unitized curtain wall, you're looking at like a Hilti total station. The general contractor is responsible for giving you a control point and a benchmark, and then the rest of the building is yours. So there's various technologies to model that exterior, the slab edges, the and elevation in and out from grid line, all that type of stuff. So Hilti Total Station is one that comes to mind. I've listened to some of your other podcasts. Obviously, there's drone technology coming into play, time elapse, different types of stuff for job readiness or maybe marketing purposes. I've seen some crazy stuff that there's actually devices that you lay in the floor and they lay out like stud placement. They can completely grid the building, and they'll map out the entire layout for demising walls and interior partitions. As obviously that only touches us when we interface with the exterior. So there's that stuff. There's on the job site type of technology. I think that technology in terms of thermal modeling, right? And your pre-construction is getting more sophisticated. You see a lot of stuff that has to do with not just for thermal, but like Revit modeling in building modeling, three-dimensional modeling. We're getting a lot more requests for key details on jobs to be to get an axiometric detail of that in terms of all the different layers from the stud out and how that's going to interface and be constructed. That's I think you could do it in CAD. Like CAD probably has a three-dimensional thing, but there's other programs that manage that activity a little bit better. So long-winded response, but I mean, top to bottom, technology is coming into play. There's still a few antiquated things out there, like Excel. Like that's still technology, but Excel is still very robust and still very applicable to its use. And then you have all your accounting stuff like that. So that's my general answer. Top to bottom, I'd say technology is critical. Where do I see it going? If I can kind of continue,
Is
well, I'd like to say that in operations and field management and operations, it'd be really difficult to replace the human element. But some of this new stuff that I see with AI, I'm not so sure. I mean, we're looking things with a limited perspective from our vantage point now. But if we project where that's going to be in 20 years, the human element may be greatly reduced. And I don't say that out of fear. I just say that out of, precision and timing and just the self-learning of systems and platforms, which will be a benefit to certain things, but also it will result in a reduction of human workforce for sure.
that makes me think of something, not to throw a curveball, but if you're just thinking about your own kids or something, if they were getting to the point where they're like, Dad, I want to get into construction, are there things you'd be telling them now? Because I just thought of like, hey, learn about AI, because you're going to need to at least be able to implement use of it so that, I just think there are certain things like that I want to be telling my kid if he's going to get into construction. I think technology is going to be a big part of construction. And I think the people who continue in construction are going to need to know how to use it and manage it.
No, absolutely. It's a good point. I always relate stuff to my experience because that's really my observations and then my personal experience. And I'll tell you that I came up in a metal shop and I was taught estimating and that side of the business in the 90s. I got to a place where I was limited in my abilities. So I actually went out and got a degree. Instead of getting a construction management degree, because I had experience at that time, because in project management specifically, in estimating, I actually elected to go get a Bachelor of Science in Information Technology because I saw the importance of that, just what we're talking about, that coming into construction heavily. So I was 37 years old to get my bachelor's degree, and that's the message that I would pass on is it doesn't have to be, and this kind of segues to a really interesting topic of really construction being one of the last industries. There's a couple out there, but one of the last industries where you can be homegrown and progress into a position of leadership without a college degree, just based on sheer experience itself, providing that you have the exposure, providing that you get those tools throughout the journey to be able to support that upper level performance. You can absolutely be a high performer in the construction industry without a college degree. It certainly helps.
Yeah, but I've seen that too. Even I had friends that I graduated high school with that went into a trade. They got trained in a trade, and they started out their careers a lot faster than I did. And I think in some ways have experience that I'm lacking in, because they were just really on the job site, learning by doing, in a way that even that's my degree at Cal Poly was construction management. And they did say their motto was learn by doing, but there's a difference. I was just talking to a guy that just graduated from college and came and just was expressing to me how different the workplace is than it is while you're learning it in school. And I was like, I had that same experience. I don't know if that ever is going to change, but I still think it's viable for a young person to consider not even going to college and get some experience in a trade. And not to say that you should neglect book smarts or computer skills or anything like that, like what you're talking about, but get some hands-on experience. I think construction will be, even for a good reason, one of the last industries to really implement all kinds of technology, because it's just an older industry. We've been building things since we've been intelligent, I think. And I think that it's always going to be an industry for people who like hands-on, like get my hands dirty. I want to see something go up in the field. And so yeah, I've encouraged friends who are like considering not going to college, just go get some trade skill experience and also be learning how to use Excel. Like you said, that's important right now. I don't know how much that's going to change in the future. I think, yeah, maybe robots will actually do construction labor, but I think you're still going to have a superintendent. I think that person is probably going to need to be human. I don't know. This all seems really far out into the future, but it might not be. So, I totally agree with you. On that topic, what do you, you can go ahead if you had something.
No, I was just going to say there's still question marks. There's definitely, you can see that it's going that direction, but there's still like, there's a kinesthetic element to the industry and orchestration, right? So when you think about like that's what BIM is supposed to manage, is just the conflicts and the sequence and, what goes first, what type of arrangement there is. So that's certainly something that can be figured out with AI and on a screen. But the actual execution of that, those layers, and then you break it down to a specific trade, whether it be, an electrician, any type of MEP, carpentry. There's a kinesthetic layer that needs to be present to problem solve in real time, because construction is really just, it's managing chaos. And I'm not so sure how robots, like this, we use it a general term, robots, but I'm not so sure how robots will be able to make those real-time audibles, those real-time adjustments and problem solving. Like that's human ingenuity. And that's going to be a difficult step to overcome. If the goal is to replace, and I don't think the goal is to replace human beings. I just think it's to be more efficient, more exact, more precise, more quick in terms of timing, in elimination of waste, elimination, just overall more sophisticated building procedures. I think that's really the goal.
It kind of brings me to the next little topic I wanted to discuss, remote working, because I'm conflicted about that topic. I feel like you've seen some of my podcast episodes that talk about doing drone photography and basically creating digital twins of the construction site. And part of the purpose of that is so that you can really talk about the site while you're in the office with a lot of visuals. You can look around now. You can bring a 360 camera into a construction site so that when you're in a meeting, you can go to a specific spot in a building in this app and look around and see, okay, there's a beam over there, there's plumbing over there, the electrical is going to go over there. So I think that's cool technology that will allow us to do more in a meeting without having to mix it with a job site. But I'm also realizing in my own job how important FaceTime is, like real, not phone FaceTime, but real FaceTime on the construction site. Not just so that I'm coordinating with other people in the field, but also so that I'm seeing it and being able to touch it. There's something I don't think will ever replace that. So that mix. And what are your opinions about remote working in general as a construction industry?
Well, it has its limitations for certain types of positions. But what I do, it works really well. I'm not a good example because I've been working remote for at least 10 years now, covering the continental United States in different positions. Anything operations-wise requires a a layer of being physically there. You have to be present. You have to show up. So for me, the company I work for, Sunrise Direct, is in Canton, Massachusetts. I currently reside in Mesa, Arizona. To be a project manager would be very difficult. I have to rely on relationships of superintendents and foremen and assistant project managers who can get out there, but it would definitely have an impact to my decision making because I don't have a firsthand read on what's going on. So that's super important. But for what I do though, pre-construction, which I do a lot of budgeting, my role is to connect from project award to operations. I bridge that gap, and I make sure that early project deliverables are being met, such as getting the shop drawings going, early submittals, long lead items, design assist. I spend 80% of my time in design assist, meeting with architects and firms. All that stuff you can do on Zoom and Microsoft Teams. There is a component that I do it, dive into operations just a smidge, like a mock-up, for example, stuff like that. So you can see the challenges when you hit that world, when you start going into mock-up. So I think that remote working works well. And typically the model that I see the companies have is like a hybrid position where they allow their technical services, their engineering departments, the pre-construction and estimating departments to be hybrid, and then their operational teams are really more in person more than anything, with a occasional day here and there where they're working remote, and that's usually how it works the best.
Nice. And really the reason that made me think of you for an episode for this is one time when I was working for you, you kind of gave our team a pep talk about trusted partnerships. And it just felt like there's something beyond just the everyday annoying pep talk of work. You can build friendships in construction, but you can also develop yourself personally to where you're that good mix between a strong PM, in my case, project manager, but also building relationships with subcontractors and even clients that are both professional and sometimes personal as well, but kind of walking that balance beam. You did a really good job a couple times with me kind of explaining that balancing act. Can you dig into that a little?
Absolutely. I mean, there's a lot there. There's a lot there to it. First thing comes to mind is like boundaries, like managing expectations and setting boundaries with people. But before I get into layers like that, I'll just kind of back up. And, in the 90s, it was still very much a bulldozer mentality where you just hit the hole like a running back, which is still an important characteristic of being successful. But, you absolutely got into it with your vendors, and you played the game with the general contractor, and, there was a lot of separation, and there was a shift. And I don't know, I'm not going to pinpoint the date of exactly where the shift was, but everybody felt the shift. And this perception of being adversaries or opponents with your customers and your vendors began to go away, began to fade. And people began to realize that we have a common goal, right? So we have a common bond, and that includes in both directions, because your vendors are just as important as your general contractors, because we're at the risk of our vendors or the mercy of our vendors, and we're only as strong as good vendors. So their success is entirely vested as well. And then so you look at this, and you look at all these little subdivisions of, the multiple specialty trades. Each direction is a partnership to deliver a common outcome, a common goal, which is a successful project on time, on budget. We want a profitable outcome. You want a high quality deliverable for the end user or the owner. Those are the type of things that should be of focus, not, game playing, schedule games, and I gotcha. That type of stuff no longer works. The I gotcha game is the human element, and that's where psychology starts to come into play with all this. And what I realized early on, thank God, is that, you know, my ego is not my amigo. Just to put it like, you know, once my ego gets in and make it about me and how I'm somehow being offended in a situation, then my ability to be of service or to positively influence a situation reduces, you know. But once I can kind of take a breath and this is not personal, it's not about me, and take other people's perspectives and understand where I need to pick something up or maybe go outside my box a little bit to provide an additional, you know, little push on something, the better it is for everybody to be successful. So partnerships, yeah, and I think that for specialty subcontractors, in my experience, anyways, back then you were just like a driver. You were just like a service provider driver, which is like in a lower quadrant of the performance. And where you really want to be is you want to get to trusted partnership, which means that you want to be a liaison to the vendor. You want to be a facilitator of service to the general contractor. You don't want to just manage a schedule and drive materials. You want to deliver communication. You want to deliver that best possible outcome. And, you know, this has taken years of getting, you know, a lot of opportunities discovered, right? Like living that life of not taking action soon enough and not being able to deliver materials and having to have really difficult conversations and just understanding my own opportunities and what didn't work before and having that anxiety to, you know, get better at what I do to provide that higher level of service to the construction team. And that's really what trusted partnership is. Because this is a longevity of a purchasing relationship. You don't want just a one-time build. I don't want to just build a 25-story, you know, building and be like, oh, we got through it, but we'll never use that company again. Like, that's not the goal. You know, the goal is to leave them with the unparalleled experience where they say, wow, like, you know, they didn't have all the answers, but they got them. They delivered, you know, whatever. They're human beings, but they were absolutely there the entire time. They delivered a high quality outcome on time, and we would find it difficult to be successful on another job without them. That's the impression that you want to leave upon general contractors and owners, and they're all mixed in. They're all mixed in. Once you're in the field, there's a little bit more separation, but in the front end, owner's rep, the architect, the architectural team, really, the general contractor, a third-party consultant, because that's now in the mix in every single job that I've been a part of over the past few years now, and then our team. And that really makes it the project team. Once you win them over and deliver that, then you have 5 advocates for your services. And they look at you and they say, that's a strong partner. We want a strong partner. When you think about partnership, like you look at like someone who's going to be your partner in a potato sack race, you know, you don't want someone who's lazy or not going to put effort in. You try to seek a good partner. And when you exhibit those behaviors, you become established as a strong partner, and they'll invite you to the next one. And that's the longevity. That's the goal here, is just to keep that continuation.
Yeah, I'm not certain where it comes from, but there's a saying, a good deal with a bad partner is always a bad deal, but a bad deal with a good partner, you'll figure it out. You know, if you got a good partner, it can be a bad deal and you can still make something work. But when you've got a bad partner, even a good deal is a bad deal, you know? It makes me think too, it was another question I wanted to talk to you about, because I'm just finding the further I get in my career, you mentioned construction is managed chaos, and I love that because it's so true. And I'm just running into one of the topics of my podcast is how come we have this, as an industry, we have this reputation of every project goes over budget and out of their schedule. And whether you're doing a home renovation and you're dealing with the contractor, it just seems like everybody always complains about the construction process. It takes longer than expected and always costs more than we expected too. And I think some of that is kind of we need people like you in your role, in the pre-construction role, doing a better job of managing expectations for a project and planning it. But I think it also takes mature leadership where you're comfortable in uncomfortable situations, you're strong when you need to be, but also a good partner, and you'll figure things out together. I didn't turn that into a question, but I don't know what you were going to say about unitizing and prefab, but that
Well, let's go.
you
Let's go that.
mentioned it.
Yeah, let's go that way.
Okay.
So, yeah, let's definitely dive into unitizing and prefabricate, because I think that's the area that has the most opportunity for the integration of technology and controlling. Also touching upon what you just said, with managing chaos, which is I'll integrate that back into the conversation, but that's the trend. Like, you see a lot of modular construction. In the facade industry, there's, what they're calling, quote unquote, mega wall panels. And there's companies doing these monstrous 12 feet wide by 30-foot long, giant sections of exterior wall assemblies. And they have, cladding elements, or maybe EFIS, or even, just different things. And they even have the windows in them now. And that's something that's definitely in a controlled environment. So when they're doing the exterior of a building, they're covering these vast areas of square footage, just with crane sets. Boom, boom, boom. Another area of modular construction is just like unit construction, like bathrooms, like bathroom modules, and that's an area that's also, you think about it, you get all the electrical set up, but your finishes are into it, and you're setting these modules into the building, and it's like one and done type of thing, where that timing is managed in a shop, that quality is managed in a shop, and the less time in the field is safer. It's more cost effective, and it's safer. You less exposure, and that's a huge thing. So quality and safety are huge benefactors of that process. Back to managing chaos, you made a good point about managing expectations, and I think that's key. I think a bunch of it's intentional with developers and ownership teams and general contractors. Either the general contractor might be trying their best to deliver the expectation, and they're holding that bar throughout the process, and perhaps they're not being realistic, or just factoring in the fact that things happen. But I think it is our job, especially to some contractors, to just be honest the whole way through. Like you said, being comfortable being uncomfortable, having those face-to-face tough conversations. Someone wants to hear 8 weeks, but the answer is 12. I can tell you 8 weeks, but it's going to be 12. Just clear sequencing of installation durations, how long things are going to take, what the steps are to get there, and looking behind and forward at the adjacent trades, not managing them, but at least considering those things. And when you're planning, because that's the key. Like you hear about the 7 Ps, those type of just various one-liners and catchphrases that you have to. It's all about ready, aim, fire, and that's really what it has. It's just planning, talking, communicating about the plan. Because when you get out there, it's no doubt going to be different than how it looked on paper and how you thought it was going to go. Now, the question is to what degree? What degree is the difference? You want to obviously limit those differences. So kind of 2 responses in there. But the technology and integration into pre-construction, right? Prefabrication, pre-glazing, mega wall panels, that type of direction really controls the other side too. It's easy. It's easier to clad a building with unitized curtain wall than it is with stick built. It's literally half the duration. And sometimes even better, depending on the modulation. But every job's not a unitized job. It's not a one-size-fits-all type of solution for buildings. All kinds of things come into play. Deck geometry, all different types of things come into play. Perhaps cost and area, right? If you have a small area of curtain wall, it doesn't make sense to unitize. It's just cost prohibitive. So there's certain things like that also factor in. So
Awesome. I love talking to you, Duane. I feel like I'm gonna have to make up another reason to have you back in the next 6 months to a year so that I can just hear more of your opinions. But thanks for coming on. Is there anything you want to plug or let people know, look you up on LinkedIn or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, not particularly. I feel like that's crazy. We just get warmed up, and we're all,
Yeah.
we definitely need to have a whatever, in a while after your podcast is wildly famous, you can have it back on. We can talk more. Nope, just yeah, look me up on LinkedIn, Sunrise Erectors. I don't mind having conversations with people that have questions about the industry or perhaps need some leaning in on certain topics. I'd be happy about that. So
Cool. Thanks again, Duane.
awesome, thank you.